Have you ever looked at the news and heard about national debt hitting another record high and thought to yourself, wait a minute, if every country on Earth is in debt, who exactly do they owe all this money to? Are there some secret space aliens lending us cash? It's a question that sounds like the setup to a joke, but the answer is fascinating and reveals a lot about how our modern world actually works. Stick with me, because we're going to unravel this massive economic mystery together. First, let's get one common misconception out of the way. The idea that every single country is in debt isn't strictly true, but the vast majority are, including all the major economies. So, the core of the question remains, who are the creditors? The answer isn't a single person or a shadowy organization. Instead, the world's debt is owned by a vast and diverse group of entities, and a huge chunk of it is actually money that countries owe to themselves. Let's break that down. When a government, like the US government, needs to borrow money, it doesn't just call up a single big bank. It issues bonds. Think of a bond as an IOU. The government sells these bonds, promising to pay back the purchase price, plus interest, over a set period of time. So, who buys these bonds? This is where it gets interesting. A significant portion is bought by domestic individuals and institutions within that same country. This includes your own retirement fund, pension plans, insurance companies, and even regular people like you and me who might buy savings bonds. When these entities buy government bonds, they are essentially lending money to their own government. So, in a way, the country owes money to its own citizens and financial system. For example, in the United States, a massive portion of the national debt is held by Social Security and other government trust funds, as well as American investors and institutions. It's an internal loop of borrowing and lending. But of course, that's not the whole story. Countries also owe money to foreign entities. This is what people usually think of when they hear about national debt. Who are these foreign lenders? Again, it's not one single group. They are primarily other governments, foreign central banks, and international private investors. Why would another country buy your country's debt? There are several reasons. For a country like China or Japan, buying US Treasury bonds is considered a very safe investment. The US government has never defaulted on its debt, so it's seen as a secure place to park large amounts of cash. It also helps these countries manage their own currency. By buying US dollars to purchase bonds, they can influence the exchange rate between their currency and the dollar, which can make their exports cheaper and more competitive on the global market. So, it's a strategic economic move. Foreign private investors, from hedge funds to wealthy individuals, also buy government bonds from other countries as part of a diversified investment portfolio, seeking stability and reliable returns. So, to recap so far, a country's debt is owned by its own citizens and institutions, and by foreign governments and private investors. But there's another layer to this onion. International organizations. Institutions like the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, and the World Bank play a crucial role, especially for developing nations. These organizations were created after World War II to promote global economic stability. They lend money to countries that are facing economic crises. But these loans often come with strings attached, known as structural adjustment programs. These programs might require the borrowing country to make specific changes to its economic policies, like cutting public spending or privatizing state-owned industries. These organizations get their money from their member countries, which are the wealthiest nations in the world. So, in a way, it's another form of countries lending to other countries, but through a formal international body. Now let's zoom out and look at the big picture. We've established that debt is held by a mix of domestic and foreign, public and private entities. There's no single creditor of the world. Instead, it's a complex, interconnected web of financial relationships. Think of it less like a single person owing money to a single bank, and more like a massive global ecosystem of credit and debt, where everyone is, to some extent, both a borrower and a lender. The pension fund that owns government bonds is a lender, but the people who rely on that pension are counting on the government, the borrower, to pay it back so they can have a secure retirement. The bank that buys government bonds is a creditor, but it also has debts of its own. This system is what underpins our entire global financial structure. It allows governments to fund everything from infrastructure projects and social programs to emergency responses without having to raise taxes to impossibly high levels immediately. It provides safe investment vehicles for people's savings, and it enables global trade and investment to flow. But what happens when this debt gets too big? This is the question that keeps economists and policymakers up at night. High levels of debt can become a burden. A larger and larger portion of a country's budget has to be used just to pay the interest on the debt, leaving less money for things like healthcare, education, and defense. If investors start to worry that a country might not be able to pay back its debt, they will demand higher interest rates to compensate for the increased risk. This can create a vicious cycle where the cost of borrowing goes up, making the debt even harder to manage. In the worst-case scenario, a country can default on its debt, which can trigger a severe economic crisis. We've seen this happen in countries like Argentina and Greece, and the consequences for their citizens were devastating. So, while debt is a necessary tool for modern economies, managing it responsibly is one of the most critical challenges that governments face. It's a constant balancing act. Let's circle back to our original, mind-bending question. Who owns the world's debt? The answer is, we do. It's held in our pension funds, our investment accounts, and by our banks. It's held by our governments and by other governments around the world. It's a reflection of the intricate financial web that connects all of us. It's not a simple case of everyone owing money to some mysterious, all-powerful creditor. Instead, it's a system where assets and liabilities are distributed across the entire global economy. Understanding this helps demystify a concept that often feels overwhelming and opaque. The global economy isn't a pyramid with a single creditor at the top. It's a network, a complex and dynamic system of interdependence. So the next time you hear a news report about the national debt, you'll know that the story is much more complicated and, frankly, more interesting than it seems. It's not just a big, scary number. It's a snapshot of the trillions of financial promises and relationships that bind our world together. I hope this has helped clear up one of the biggest questions in economics. It's a complex topic, but breaking it down makes it much more understandable. If you found this explanation helpful and want to explore more fascinating questions about how our world works, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more content just like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.